Let's go out west to a place that is leading the country on how to get minimum wage to the citizens of this country. $15 an hour in the great city of Seattle. That's where our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield is. It's great to have him back on the program. A blogger for the Huffington Post and the Daily Coast. Also a reporter for Free Speech Radio. Mark, great to have you back on the show. How are you?
Good to talk to you again, Jeff, and congratulations on being on WCPT in Chicago.
It is great. Great to be with our brothers and sisters out there, and fantastic city and great people. And I thank Charlie and the rest of the gang there for giving us the opportunity here to talk some progressive politics and let people know what the rest of the country is doing and of course, what their folks are doing in Chicago as well. So give us a little background there. I mean, I know that we have had a change in mayor there in Seattle, and Mr. McGinn, I believe, the former mayor, did some good things, a new one there. You guys did some really great jobs in the suburbs, I guess it was Tacoma area, and now it's in the city. So I guess, first of all, congratulations to all the progressives who were involved in this, including you, Mark, because you've been out there writing about this for a while. So how did it come together? I mean, you know, it took a consensus in trying to get these legislators and the mayor on the same page. So give us some background.
Well, there was quite a tight coalition of labor unions and progressive groups in the city that got behind it. As soon as our new city council member, Shama Sawant, was elected. And so that was her major platform as a candidate for city council. She won a surprise election over incumbent who'd been there. Richard Conlon had been there for years and years and years, so that was a shock to all the political consultants. But it was a major platform in her campaign. It was also something that our new mayor, Ed Murray, had talked about during his campaign, and it had actually been passed as Proposition 1 in SeaTac, Washington, just south of Seattle. Mm-hmm. However, there's a court battle going on in terms of whether that applies to Seattle International Airport. The SeaTac, Washington, already passed a $15 an hour minimum wage, so they were the first in the country. Seattle decided to take on this issue, and there was a very interesting political strategy, Jeff, because the city council member and the 15now.org campaign, that's the website you can go to get more information about this. First of all, they said, let's make this a national movement. So it has actually spread to cities like New York City, Philadelphia, Portland, Oregon, and there's a 15 Now movement in Minnesota now. But it was a two-pronged attack. It was sort of, all right, let's see if we can get the city council to pass this and make this a city law. Now, after the mayor appointed an income inequality task force, there was some rancor on that commission, and it had to do mostly with how are we going to phase this in for small businesses. So there was some disagreement. And during that time, the $15 an hour minimum wage campaign in Seattle had their first national conference in April. I wrote about this at Daily Coast. And during that conference decided that they were going to also get signatures for a citywide initiative. And so a charter amendment was filed with the city, and they were already beginning to collect signatures. That was sort of the backup plan in case the city council didn't follow through. But as of this week, the Seattle City Council did unanimously approve a $15 an hour minimum wage for Seattle. It's going to have a 3-year phase-in, especially for small businesses. So it gives folks a little bit of time to readjust to the new minimum wage. But as I've told several people, this movement definitely has legs, so to speak. There's momentum across the country. And then you have the Democrats in Congress and President Obama calling for a $10.10 minimum wage. You also have Vermont, which just passed a new minimum wage there, which I believe goes into effect in January, which would be $9.60 an hour. So they would actually be the highest minimum wage in the country until next year, on April 1st, 2015, when Seattle will begin its $15 minimum wage. That's when it will finally go into effect. So very smart strategy. very well organized progressive movement. And it was really, surprising to see people to actually get together on this one issue and agree to disagree and just work together on something that everybody could do. And it worked. So, yes, kudos to Seattle for stepping out on this issue.
No doubt. Talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. And, of course, the phone number to join us, 877-489-9421, 877-489-9421. Of course, you want to email me as Jeff at revolutionboston.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. And, the question I have for our listeners, if you're listening to us in Ohio or in Illinois, Chicago, Cleveland, Boston, wherever you are, I would love to find out what you believe has to be done to match Seattle. To get $15 an hour in your city. We want to hear from you again. Phone number to join us, 877-489-9421. Talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield here. He was part of it, pushing it in the Northwest. So I ask you, Mark, we get it in SeaTac. I know there's still legal issues there. You have it in Seattle. What are the chances other Washington cities? And, when does the state get involved? And just south of you, another very progressive city, Portland, that would potentially be another place that we can happen. I mean, how can this snowball, particularly in your neck of the woods, very progressive part of America? A lot of people leave the most progressive part of America, that Cascadia, Vancouver, Seattle, Portland area, and you include the Bay Area in California. That's really where progressive America is very strong, not to discount our friends in Chicago or New York or here in New England. But I think that there is a growing leadership that you guys are showing. What about it? Can we get some momentum here moving off of this decision the other day?
Well, our own city council member, Shama Sawan, already spoke in Portland on this issue, so they're getting really organized there. And I think it just seems to be a natural process at this point, because San Francisco currently has the highest hourly minimum wage at $10.74 an hour. But, Minnesota raised their state's guaranteed wage more than $3 to $9.50 an hour. That's going to happen in 2016. California, Connecticut, and Maryland have also passed laws increasing their respective wages to $10 or more in the next few years. But I think the momentum is already there, and there will be, I'm sure, a statewide initiative, at least a signature gathering campaign in Washington State as a follow-up to this. That's already been discussed at the $15 an hour minimum wage conference that was here in Seattle in April, which, by the way, included some interesting people like David K. Johnson, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist.
Sure, frequent contributor to our show, yep.
Yes, and author of the book, The Perils of Inequality, a very, very critical look at the economic system in the United States. And also there was Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Reports, and also our local blogger, David Goldstein. So there's a lot of people behind this issue across the country, and I think if the progressives can get together and organize on a local level and then move it to a state level, this definitely could become a national initiative, and I think that's probably already in the works. As I mentioned, Philadelphia, New York City, Minnesota, Portland already have $15 an hour minimum wage campaigns happening as we speak today. So I think you'll see it all across the country. A lot of states and cities are stepping it up, to $9 to $10 an hour. Vermont has done that, but $15 an hour is what Chama Sawant and Ed Murray and other folks in Seattle are saying would be appropriate at this point. They really think that $10.10 an hour is not enough for cities like Seattle, where the cost of living is going up, and there is a lot of money with all the corporate development that's happening here. So I think if the labor unions and the progressive groups can get together on this issue across the country, you're going to see more and more of this in the next few years, definitely.
Talking with our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show, a Seattle-based blogger for the Huffington Post and the Daily Coast, and you can also Check them out on Free Speech Radio, heard on the Pacifica Radio Network. I am interested, Mark, in this, and I'm just wondering how similar it is with the world of Microsoft there as it is in Silicon Valley. Just yesterday in California, Mike Honda won a resounding victory, and kudos to our friends at the DFA and the PCCC who helped Mr. Honda. A real classic populist progressive Democrat beaten a heavily financed by the tech world Ro Khanna, former of the Obama administration. How does that coalition, is the Microsoft world there, those that are around it, are they impediments to pushing on this, or are they actually, do they actually work with you guys? I'm just interested from those who are outside of Seattle how that world is, because we saw it yesterday. The money that was spent for Mr. Khanna was unbelievable against the progressive Mr. Honda, but it was the Democrat, Mr. Honda, the progressive populist Democrat, prevailing, by 20 points. Your thoughts on that world of tech there, which obviously is a big part of the economy.
Well, it was actually, the concern was actually more about small businesses. It seems like the larger businesses were not trying to stand in the way. The only question was how to accommodate small businesses. And
Sure.
Shama Sawant, our city council member, although she is an avowed socialist, she has said all along that part of her election was the result of a coalition that she and her campaign had formed with small businesses. And so there is a sense that we need to protect small businesses in Seattle. We need to keep the local
Sure.
economy going, the mom-and-pop shops. So the only question was really about how would this affect small businesses. And there was some disagreement from the anti-$50 an hour minimum wage campaign. But most of that actually came from smaller businesses who were afraid that, if overnight they had to pay all of their employees and this increased wage, that they wouldn't be able to cover the cost of that. Well, the result was that Shama Sawant and the other folks at the $15 an hour minimum wage national conference here decided, yes, we need at least a 3-year phase-in. And in some cases, it's up to a 5-year phase-in, depending on the size of the company. So it was more about small business, Jeff. There was a less concern from Boeing, Microsoft, Starbucks. It was more, how are we going to deal with the mom-and-pop shops and allow them to transition into this program.
We'll come back and take your calls once again at 877-489-9421. We'll continue our conversation with Mark Taylor-Canfield after this timeout. You're listening to the Jeff Santos Show.
This is WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where you can catch the Bill Press Show weekday mornings from 5.
Depending on the size of the company. So it was more about small business, Jeff. There was a less concern from Boeing, Microsoft, Starbucks. It was more, how are we going to deal with the mom-and-pop shops and allow them to transition into this program.
We'll come back and take your calls once again at 877-489-9421. We'll continue our conversation with Mark Taylor-Canfield after this timeout. You're listening to the Jeff Santos Show.
This is WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where you can catch the Bill Press Show weekday mornings from 5 to 8 a.m.
The trade gap widened to a 2-year high in April as Americans bought more cars and phones overseas. But the Federal Reserve's Beige Book survey indicates a pickup in economic activity across the nation, and it shows retail sales coming back after the harsh winter. Japan's second largest insurance company is buying Protective Life Corp. Daiichi Insurance is paying $5.7 billion for the Alabama-based insurer. U.S. crude inventories fell more than expected during the final week of May. Stockpiles dropped by 3.4 million barrels. Once again, stocks ending higher. I'm Chris Maurer, CNBC.
CNBC Business Updates weekdays at 9:30, 12:30, 3:30, and 6:30. Now, your WCPT news, traffic, and weather update.
Good afternoon. This traffic report is sponsored by SafeAuto.com. On the Eden, Slate Cook to the Kennedy, about half an hour. Kennedy also running about half an hour now in both directions between O'Hare and downtown. Slow speeds, though, on the Eisenhower outbound to Wolf, 38, 18 in. Stevenson, 33, Lakeshore Drive to the Tri-State. On the Dan Ryan at 16 either side, downtown to 95th. No problems, 57 or the Bishop Ford, 95th to I-80. Getting a word of a problem now on the Metro Milwaukee District West Line train. A train is stalled near Route 25 and St. Charles Street, so police are redirecting traffic in the area. You can also expect delays on that train line. Cloudy, high 63, down to about 52 tonight, and tomorrow's looking sunny, high 65. This report brought to you by Safe Auto. I'm Ginger Jordan. For local news, traffic, and transit every half hour. We're back with Jeff Santos right after this on Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM and FM.
Connect on Facebook.
Jeff Santos Show.
32 minutes past the hour. We're back with Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. Getting your thoughts on minimum wage in your city. 877-489-9421. You know, I was reading where Seattle was leading the way in an area that you think that would be completely different. Thought with Amazon and that whole world there. But the idea of an independent bookstore, you mentioned small businesses earlier, Mark, there's been a little bit of a revitalization of that. And, I'm hoping that that world of independent small business, which I know is an area that you were just talking about in terms of making sure they're on board here with labor, with the progressive groups. Is that surprised you, I guess? And I think it's taken hold in other cities as well, this idea of returning once again to the mom and pop, as you called it, bookstore, independent bookstore. People are actually reading an actual book as opposed to doing it, on their Kindle. Your thoughts?
In Seattle, there are more bookstores than I think gas stations, and people here read a lot. So we have the famous Elliott Day bookstore here, which brings in speakers like former President Jimmy Carter and others to speak on book tours. So, yeah, there is a lot of support for that here, and I think that some of this actually was part of the ethic of the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is kind of funny to me if you think about it, because maybe 20, 30 years ago, this idea of buying American and supporting small business was sort of a conservative platform issue, but it's become a progressive issue. And all over Seattle, there's this strange combination of local businesses serving the employees of large corporations. And in Seattle, it's funny, near the Amazon Google complexes, you'll find all sorts of local businesses that serve vegetarian food and independent bookstores, all sorts of sort of very progressive businesses that are doing quite well in the corporate atmosphere. So it's a unique culture here. I think, even there's a joke in Seattle that even the CEOs don't wear ties here. It's a very sort of progressive, relaxed sort of place. Folks in Boston would probably be upset to go to the opera and not see people dressed in tuxedos, but Seattle is a very progressive town, and so even the corporate culture here tends to be relatively progressive on a lot of these issues. So that's very
I love that. I love the fact that you guys on the West Coast are very much. I'm not a big tie wearer myself, so I have to stand out in the world of ties here in the stuffy Northeast sometimes. But it's just a more comfortable setting, and I think it's great that you're doing this. I guess my final question for you, for our friends listening today in Chicago and across the country in the Northeast and in Florida, how do they sort of replicate? Or really is it all about getting your local unions, your local progressive organizations to basically take root, not necessarily follow the path of Seattle? Or maybe there are some things that each city can learn. Your thoughts here in the final 2 minutes.
Well, it seems to me that the $15 an hour minimum wage campaign that started in SeaTac, Washington, and then moved to Seattle is a national campaign. And if you go to 15now.org, you'll find connections to other groups around the country who are doing this kind of work. So I would say that Shoma Sawant, our city council member, has gotten quite a bit of national and international media attention after she was elected. She has definitely been spearheading this idea that it needs to spread across the country, that this is not just a local issue, that this is an issue that affects working people all across the country. So I think that the movement for a $15 an hour minimum wage campaign is going to be just basically exported from Seattle through the connections that have already been made here with people in these other communities that are working on that issue. So, yeah, I think 15 now is probably the way that that's going to happen. And then along the way, a lot of communities may decide to, do a smaller step up towards that final goal. But eventually, the people that are running this campaign would like to see the entire country on a federal basis have a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, that may take some time, Jeff, so this could be an ongoing campaign. It could take, another decade for this to happen. But the organization is already in the works and the connections are already being made, so it looks like it's just going to grow from here.
Mark Taylor-Canfield, Seattle-based blogger for the Huffington Post and Daily Coast, and checking them out. Free Speech Radio on Pacifica Radio Network.
But the organization is already in the works and the connections are already being made, so it looks like it's just going to grow from here.
Mark Taylor-Canfield, Seattle-based blogger for the Huffington Post and Daily Coast, and checking them out. Free Speech Radio on Pacifica Radio Network. He's been our guest. Mark, thank you so much. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and all the best in your...
The funny thing about Wall Street banksters is that they make a killing by defrauding millions of homeowners, customers, investors, and taxpayers. Then, when caught, they wonder why we don't love them. That's funny as in bizarre, not as in ha-ha. Still, it's hard not to laugh at Jamie Dimon, the vainglorious silver-haired boss of the J.P. Morgan Chase House of Banksters. Last year alone, the bank racked up a record level of regulatory fines for the recidivist criminal operation overseen by the boss. A little self-reproachment might have done him some good, but Dimon chose a funny way, again meaning bizarre, to express remorse. He's been running a Feel Sorry for Me campaign, claiming that he's the victim of this sordid story. Never mind his long sheet of malfeasance and incompetence, which cost so many so much. Jamie wails that everything from Wall Street's bailout to the pay of top bank executives have made people envious of bankers' success. Thus, he moans, an anti-Wall Street sentiment has spread through the public, prompting politicians and regulators to pander to this populist anger by persecuting enterprising bankers like him. He called the whole thing, quote, unfair. Good grief. This guy bills bank profits through rip-offs, piles billions of dollars in fines on the backs of shareholders, pockets $20 million in personal pay for 1 year's work, and he wants us to weep for him? Being a Wall Street boss, you see, means never having to say you're sorry, for it's always someone else's fault. This is Jim Hightower saying, only 25 years ago, more than 1,000 bankers were prosecuted for this sort of malfeasance during the savings and loans scandal. Let's return to the ethical accountability of those days. Or maybe we the people should send our own message to today's banksters by rolling a guillotine down the center of Wall Street.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
This is Alan Combs, and I'm on Chicago's Progressive Talk. Service employees today.
Laborers International members are on the forefront of the industry.
We're 500,000 proud and strong men and women united through collective bargaining agreements.
We earn family-supporting pay, good benefits, and the opportunity for advancement and better lives. Do you?
To learn more about the Laborers International Union of North America, go to liuna.org.
Explore, wander, travel, and all in one place, the museum.
The National Education Association wants you to raise your hand for student success.
I'm NEA President Dennis Van Rokel. Treat your child to a museum this weekend and watch their minds escape to places it's never been before. Museums will expose your child to different eras and cultures and will take them for a journey of a lifetime.
Visit nea.org/parents for more tips.
Connect on Twitter
@JeffSantos Show.
Minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show. Just you and me to the top of the hour. 877-489-9421 is the phone number to join us. 877-489-9421. You know, folks, it is very interesting how Seattle, in the Seattle metropolitan community, you heard our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield talk about how they came together. Small businesses, big business, the Microsofts and the Boeings, labor unions. That is the coalition that can win in every state. And that's why I get on the case of an Allison Grimes, the candidate running for Senate in Kentucky against Mitch McConnell. Because you can put together that kind of economic populist message, combine it with going green, end the pollution in your state. I know it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to tell your people, oh, they're coming after us. There is a blueprint to get minimum wage in every state in the country. Not just the blue states, not just the blue and purple states, but those in dark red too. We can do this. There has been success story after success story in a number of different cities. Whether it's minimum wage, whether it's issue on the environment. Our great friends in Chicago have built a great independent radio station in these difficult times. Our friends in California doing what they're doing on the environment. Leading the way, Jerry Brown. On and on. We can do this. It's going to be your community, your neighborhood, your street that's going to have to take charge. And that's the only way it's going to happen, folks. 877-489-9421. You and me to the top of the hour. Let's start the calls with Leo in Chicago. You're first. How you doing, Leo?
Hi. Yeah, I just a quick comment on what you guys are talking about. You know, it's great. $15 an hour it'd be a great thing for this country, no doubt. But the bottom line, though, is the cost of what we have to pay for everything. If we get $15, $20, and it could be $100 an hour. If everything keeps going, everything else going up in the air, all the costs that we have to endure every day, we're still going to be in the same place. So I think we have to check spending.
Nobody is talking about $100 an hour.
No, I'm just telling you, $15 an hour is a great thing. What I'm talking about is the cost of living.
I don't disagree with you. But I think you're mixing things, and I don't know where you're coming from and what your end game is. But all I can tell you is you look around the world, look at Western Europe, look at Canada. They're all raising their minimum wages. You can live there. You're not going to be the wealthiest person in the world. Nobody's talking about $100 an hour.
I don't want
but people have sustainability. That's the difference, and that's what people are asking for. Why should somebody work 3 jobs at $7 an hour?
Agree.
And barely spend time with their kids? If you want to have family values, I just feel that this is a first step. Not the only. It's not nirvana. Go ahead.
I agree. No, I'm just saying we have to control on what people are going to charge us for things that we need. If things that we need are going to keep going up, then $15 an hour is not going to get it either. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, I mean, obviously, but I mean, people will outprice them. I mean, in the marketplace, people will basically price themselves out. So I mean, eventually, you have to be able to exist in the community that you're in if you're a business. So, $15 an hour is not gonna destroy a business, even though all the other naysayers will try to say that. And again, this is not the end game. This has to be coupled, and again, I have been out there saying that the president has to get on the road, and his advocates have to get on the road and start talking about this as part of a bigger deal. You're not going to get a college kid who spent $60,000 or $100,000 on college, to be excited with $15 an hour. You will, though, if he or she had a degree in environmental science and can get a job, maybe starting at $40,000 or $50,000 a year, and maybe in 6 figures in a couple of years. And that's what we need to do, which is why I criticize Zuleika Grimes, because she could be pushing for those jobs in Louisville and Lexington and all the other states that are going against the idea of going green. That all connects the dots. That's how I look at it, Leo.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Leo, for the call. I appreciate it. That's just, folks, I mean, I feel that, if there is, it's not just a one and done. This is part of a better economic America. It's the minimum wage. It's the fact that we have Obamacare. That's one less bill, that catastrophic bill that you could have, if you didn't have the legislation, the Affordable Care Act, you didn't have minimum wage. That means 3 jobs, maybe 4, in case you get sick. These are all things. Or maybe a 22-year-old kid who has never left home, came back from college, staying with you, sleeping in the basement. I ran into somebody yesterday at the grocery store, and he's in his late 20s. He said, I'm not leaving. I have nowhere to go. Well, at some point, he'll fall in love and he'll figure out that he wants to maybe see the world, whatever. But the fact is that you have to put together the economic plan. The economic plan is really, really important. 877-489-9421 is the phone number to join us. You can email me, jeff@revolutionboston.com. I want to hear from you. Chicago, Cleveland, Boston. I want to hear from you. 877-489-9421. But that's what has to happen. And that's why, when we were talking with Lawrence Korb earlier, the concern of always talking foreign policy. I mean, again, you pick up the New York Times today, and that's good journalism. It's the best we got. Front page story, can GI be tied to 6 lost lives? Facts are murky. Prisoner deal puts president on defensive. Next story, going right to left, with choice at Tiananmen Square, student took road to riches. There are national stories in the paper, but you got to go through it. But all the front page, as our friend Chris Matthews would like to say, the top of the fold. All foreign policy. So, when you can dominate the news page, Times, the Post, the Tribune, the Globe, Los Angeles Times, whatever the case may be. On a domestic issue, the minimum wage is what we're talking about here. The concern over health care, not the Bannon death panels crap that Republicans roll out all the time, but the positive parts of this. That's what Americans want. They want it. They concern themselves with their own dollars and cents. As Leo, our last caller, was talking about, he's concerned about the cost of living. Well, we have to deal with all of it. The economic pie, the economic pot, all of it. And to me, that's the only way we're going to deal with it, folks. Go out on a full offensive, not keep the defensive game, which unfortunately on the left wing, the Obama administration, always taking the incoming and never bringing out the offense going the other way. I think with the environment, they started that, and we got to keep that moving. 877-489-9421, the phone number to join us. Let's go to Mark in Chicago. Mark, how are you?
How you doing, bud? I'm doing great. Great topic today.
Thank you.
I think what we need to realize is that everything is high. It's not the minimum wage that's low. It's that gas prices are ridiculously high, overpriced, and people that are trying to survive need to. It's not about the minimum wage. It's about everything else that's high. College tuition is high. Gas prices are high. Heating at home is very high. And if that stuff were to lower, I think that would be easier to be living out. To make a normal wage.
I agree with you, but let's think about this for a second. And I don't know if you live in the city of Chicago, but if you don't have to drive, okay. I don't know if you can take the commuter rail. People take more commuter rail. People do telecommuting. People have an opportunity to bicycle to work if you're close enough. Whatever the case may be, you can't do it in Chicago and Boston year-round. I understand that unless you're crazy. Get out there with 3 hats and 4 coats to ride the bicycle in January. But there are ways to do it, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to take the car, is what I'm getting at. And that's why political leadership is important, to keep up with the infrastructure. We had Governor Rendell on yesterday. He's in your city tomorrow. Talking with Ray LaHood, who ran the Secretary of Transportation, ran the Transportation Department, I should say, from the Chicagoland area. Let's rebuild. I mean, you got bridges there, that are falling apart.
Yeah,
and I know that Governor Quinn would like the dollars to do it, but you don't have it because the federal government is in paralysis.
Right. I'm a union electrician, and what's killing me is my taxes, gas prices, and fueling my home, and college tuition. I have 2 kids in college and a third one on the way next year, and I have not missed a day in 25 years. I'm a very lucky person that has kept working through all the thick and thin. But what's hurting me is the gas prices, the heating my home or cooling my home, and I think if those things were lower or reasonable, you wouldn't need to raise the minimum wage or any wage to be at that. I mean, cost of living goes up.
No, you need to. You need to. There's no way around it. That may be your perspective, but the fact is, Mark, you can't have people making $7 an hour who are 40 years old.
Right.
And you cannot survive. And then if you have to make $7 an hour, you got to work a second job. I go back to the idea again, who's taking care of the kids? What happened in there, I think, in Kenosha, Wisconsin? These websites that the parents weren't monitoring, these 15-year-old, 2 girls, I believe, ended up, killing another girl following this stupid website model. The parents are there. I'm not saying that they're always going to be there and do the right thing, but at least you give them a chance. But you can't if they're making $7 an hour and working 3 jobs. Not possible. So that's what we need. I appreciate your call.
But aren't those jobs? Excuse me.
Go ahead. Make a final comment. I got some other calls I need to get to.
Weren't those jobs for younger people anyway, not a 40-year-old person?
No. That's the lies of the FOX network and some other right-wing media that you happen to tune into. No. This is people that are 35, 45, 55 years of age working at a Burger King, a Wendy's, a McDonald's, and all these other places. Reality is today we've lost the manufacturing base. They've been shipped out to Bangladesh and Guatemala, and that's what has happened. So I appreciate it, Mark, and I'm glad you're working for the union, and I'm glad they're taking care of you. What are you, IBW? Where are you working?
IBW Local 134, the greatest local in the whole world.
I love it. They're great people, and they're great, and it's all about winning, too, right?
Yes, it's all about working and building this country.
That's right. Thank you, Mark, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you, IBW. Let's go to Steve in McHenry, Illinois.
Hey, how you doing?
Is it McHenry? Is that what it is?
McHenry. MCHenry.
Okay. All right, very good. What's up?
I was thinking about this minimum wage situation, and I own a couple small used car dealers, and I deal a lot with younger people getting out of high school, and the problem that I see with some of these kids is they don't have motivation to build a new career. And I then started thinking about, well, $7 an hour, $8 an hour, whatever minimum wage is. I pay my guys $10, which I don't think is out of line for an 18-year-old porter. But how is it that you're 35, 40 years old making that dollar amount?
Look, I'm going to keep you on hold, Steve, because if you can hold on, we'll talk to you at the top of the hour. But, it's... Put it this way, we got to educate you, my men. It's real. We'll be right back with Steve and your calls on the Jeff Santos Show after this. Time out.
Healthy Outlook with Dr. Keith and Coach Chip on Out Chicago.
So something that's come up quite a bit with us and our clients is what acidic body is, or what an alkaline body is. The standard American diet, or the SAD diet as it's called, often is very acidic.
The body works at a certain pH. Anything above that or below that, things just don't work very well. And you can see that as being fatigued, having problems with sugar regulation, and just overall just not being the best that you can be.
Right, and so some very acidic foods are buttermilk, milk, pork, pastas. The more alkaline foods are the spinach, broccoli, artichoke, Brussels sprouts, avocados, green tea, surprisingly lemon.
Healthy Outlook on Out Chicago is sponsored by Colatex Bakery and Deli, offering artisan, non-GMO breads and a wide variety of natural foods. Learn more at colatexbakery.com. Healthy Outlook is featured in Out Chicago every Sunday from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on WCPT AM and FM and at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Healthy Outlook is featured in Out Chicago every Sunday from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on WCPT AM and FM and at chicagosprogressivetalk.com.
AP Radio News. I'm Jim McGuire. American Caitlin Coleman and her Canadian husband, Joshua Boyle, have been missing since traveling to a mountainous region of Afghanistan in October of 2012. AP has learned that a man who claims to have ties to the Taliban sent a pair of videos last year to Coleman's father. In this clip, Coleman makes a direct appeal to the president.
I ask my government and my president, Barack Obama, to please bring about our release as quickly and in whatever way possible.
The families decided to publicize the couple's plight because of all the attention given to the release of Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Topping the agenda for President Obama and the others at the G7 summit, Russia and Ukraine. White House correspondent Mark Smith reports from Brussels.
Over dinner at the modernistic European Union headquarters building, the president and the others are mulling their next moves. But those are not expected to include more sanctions. Now that Vladimir Putin's pulled some troops back from Ukraine's borders and reluctantly accepted the outcome of last month's election, the likelihood is limited G7 measures targeting senior Kremlin officials will be left in place.
Obama will close his trip in France on Friday, taking part in ceremonies marking the 70th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. Runoff election likely in Mississippi. Republican primary for U.S. Senate. Sixth-term incumbent Thad Cochran, challenger Chris McDaniel, headed to that June 24th runoff. Most precincts have reported, but an unknown number of mail-in and provisional ballots have yet to be counted. Unofficial results show McDaniel with a slight lead over Cochran, but neither has the 50% plus one vote needed to win outright. The Supreme Court has refused to grant a stay of a federal judge's order declaring Oregon's same-sex marriage ban unconstitutional. The National Organization for Marriage had asked an appeals court to grant its standing in the case since Oregon's Attorney General refused to defend the state law. This is AP Radio.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs, 92.5 WCPT FM DeKalb, and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com, Chicago's only independent progressive talk station. And now, a Chicago news, traffic, and weather update.
Good afternoon. News on Chicago's Progressive